I'm looking for the doctor.
Welcome aboard. I'm the doctor, or will be.
You know, I really think you might.
What? Do you understand me?
Perhaps I could explain.
Perhaps you could.
I want to get you to see, and I'm almost there.
Where?
I don't know. It depends on the randomizer.
No. For once, I would like to know where I'm going.
No, you really wouldn't.
Why ever not?
Do you remember?
Pull to open.
Pull to open.
Yes, and what do you do? I want to know what happens next.
What if I get bored? I need a television, couple of books, anyone with chess.
Now, down to business.
Hey there, and welcome to a special episode of Pull to Open, where we normally are going through the entire television program, Doctor Who, story by story in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and yes, we do go through the entire show in random order, but it's according to a very particular list of Doctor Who stories that we like to call the Codex. And we thought that we would zero in for this special episode on the Codex itself, which you can read in the show notes if you would like to pull it up right now, the Pull to Open Codex. The link is in there, and you can follow along with us because, you know, as Doctor Who fans, we like to debate what Doctor Who actually is.
Do we?
Do we ever? And we love our spreadsheets. We've talked about this before on the show. That is definitely a defining feature of Doctor Who fandom is spreadsheets. And my goodness, what a spreadsheet the Pull to Open Codex has become. It started off as an incomplete list that I gave to Pete some years ago, and
it was one story short.
It was one story short. That story was Destiny of the Daleks. We've now done that story. We need never mention it again. That was the one mistake. But we also made some judgment calls about what a story is and how we were going to approach it. So we thought we'd break the fourth wall a little bit this week and get into those decisions. Pete, first of all, we wanted to talk about what the Codex is and what it isn't, right? So there are other televised things in Doctor Who that are not Doctor Who. There's K9 Company, Sarah Jane Adventures, Torchwood, the Coal Hill School thing that I'm forgetting what it was called. Class, thank you.
Yeah, you could even take a further step back and go, well, the Doctor Who canon and you know canonicity gets debatable when you get into these other media, but there are novels, there are comic strips, there are Big Finish audio adventures, and the level of canonicity to these other media is always debatable because a lot of them contradict each other. They reuse stories. They even reuse some of the stories from the novels in the TV series, as most fans know.
Right,
so,
human nature. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for starters, we don't do those. We might in a future podcast go deeper into these really deep cuts on Doctor Who for basic reasons, not just the canonicity question, but you know what is the audience you're really trying to reach? And yes, we know everyone here is. Most people who are listening are probably pretty hardcore fans, but we want to be very welcoming to those who aren't. And even though we make reference occasionally to some of these media when it's interesting and relevant to the story we're talking about, Doctor Who's a mass media show. We want to welcome everyone who may be a casual fan who comes in and just happens to have an episode they like. And I don't want anyone coming in and just it being impenetrable from the get-go. Yes. So we're sticking with televised media for starters.
Yes. In future Pull to Opens, once we are past the main canon, which is going to take us at least a few more years, even if we were doing 52 a year.
Well, especially since they're making more.
Yeah, exactly.
They always will.
At some point. Yeah, at some point the number's going to raise again, and then we'll have to keep knocking it down. But that certainly guarantees a long life for you, dear listeners, in what we hope is one of your favorite Doctor Who podcasts, if not your favorite podcast of all time. There, I said it. That's what we're going for. Aim high. That's what I said.
As you were talking about even within televised media, there's all these other things like Class, etc., Sarah Jane Adventures. And, you know, again, we're starting with the series. Obviously, like stuff that is completely, I wouldn't say a joke in every time, but it is clearly outside the bounds of the show itself. looking at dimensions in time, for example, Curse of Fatal Death, which was obviously a
Yes.
spoof. I mean, those are fun to talk about, but to sort of talk about them within the context of Doctor Who as a show and story, it's really beyond the scope.
Yeah, and even Time Crash, which I think is maybe one of those where people sort of accept it as canon. No, I don't think so. I think we we leave that out, even though it's a 5-minute special. Like, no, we are just purely covering the actual televised stories that are full length.
I'm not here to debate whether Time Crash is canon or not. It's more like it's 5 minutes. Exactly. We can talk about it when the context of the episodes it intersects with, but I don't think it certainly doesn't deserve its own entry.
And we did. Well, I'll say that there may be one exception to this, which is Night of the Doctor, which we did talk about in the context of Day of the Doctor. This really is so much more of a prequel to Day of the Doctor than anything else. It's so linked, it's so connected, and that's definitely something we're going to discuss as we go through the Codex and look at some of the calls that we've made.
Yeah.
And we wanted
starting with the rule. It's just anything that was a story in the in the television program that for the past 60 years has been called Doctor Who. That's kind of your basic rule, right? So starting from there, we've got them all sequentially in the Codex, and we had to make calls just as really the production teams of Doctor Who and people sort of organizing the show have had to make calls like what is a complete story and what isn't, because it was broadcast in different ways. They were 25-minute episodes for the most part in the classic series, and sometimes it was 2, 3, 4 all the way up to 12 for the Daleks Masterplan. Which is a good segue to our first not controversy, but first call we had to make. In chronologically in the Codex.
So you Hartnell fans, you old school Who fans know that the Daleks Masterplan is a 12-episode story. I believe 8 of which are missing. But there was also a prequel episode called Mission to the Unknown, which actually has been reconstructed by actors. It's sort of the only reconstructed story in our Codex. Now, what we've done, we've made the call to make our job even harder when we go to the Daleks Masterplan by adding Mission to the Unknown, which is our first diversion from what you might call the canon Codex.
What were we thinking? I remember this was even before we went fully random. We were talking about it, what constitutes a full story, and we're like, the thing is, I ultimately pushed you into pulling this into the Daleks Masterplan. It's really,
I remember it the other way around, actually, Pete. I remember that I was advocating for it. I think because I'd seen the Mission to the Unknown prequel, and I was like, well, this is so clearly part of something else, right?
Yeah.
This is so clearly building up to something else. It just makes story sense.
Honestly, I haven't seen it, but I've obviously read outlines of it. And from what I can understand structurally, this is essentially the cold open to the Daleks Masterplan, if you want to think about it in New Who context, right? So I think you got to smush them together. It's all one story.
Yeah, pretty easy call, even though it does make our lift bigger. We are slaves to the story here. We are slaves to storytelling, and that's what makes most storytelling sense.
Totally. So next on the list in terms of our calls that we needed to make is Trial of a Time Lord.
Yes, so zooming forward in time.
Because most everything is pretty straightforward up until that point. Even the Key to Time, which is a very bold season-long arc for the time it was broadcast. That's a pretty simple call. I mean, those are very clearly separate stories, different themes, different guest casts, different sets. Even though they're linked through the Key to Time, that's really just kind of gives each episode its own little MacGuffin within it. But
we've been to one already. We've been to the Androids of Tara, and it certainly didn't suffer by being seen out of order, right, in terms of the Key to Time season. It was very, very self-contained. So I totally think we made the right call there. But yes, Trial of a Time Lord is the first difficult one. Do you treat it as one full story, or is it a series of clip shows as
Right.
we talked about. So we did the Mysterious Planet, and so again we've kind of dipped into this and tested whether it should work. And
So
yeah, I think it really
well,
did.
well, yeah, the thing is, our call is to separate them out. Now, there is a pragmatic reason for this, because then it would be even longer than the Daleks Master Plan,
Yep.
even with Mission to Unknown. And honestly, even if that were 14 episodes, I think it'd be slightly longer, because the Ultimate Foe, the last episode of Trial of a Time Lord, is famous. I believe it's the longest single episode of the classic series. We'll do the research when we get to it. But it like 14, I mean, wow. Like, I can't even imagine. But these are, it is a season-long arc. They are linked more than what we just talked about, which is the key to time.
Yeah.
So there is clearly not just quite an arc, but it's like a progressing plot in the it's not even really in the background. It's kind of in the foreground, and all the stories are in the background of the trial scenes of the Doctor, the Valyard, the Inquisitor, and everything going on in the Gallifreyan trial room. So it's tough. It's tough. You could see it as like entirely one story and sort of just binge it all at once. But then you have the problem of, the Mysterious Planet, Mind Warp, and Terror of the Vervoids in particular are all sort of distinct Doctor Who stories, even if they have this sort of linkage in the trial.
They feel very different. The only linkage is that the Time Lords are all watching it. So basically, season 23, the Trial of a Time Lord season, that troubled season that really doomed Doctor Who to its early grave, to its first grave, was really, it was a set of stories that were smushed together, and the link is that the Time Lords are all watching it. It's just like the fourth wall has broken a little bit, and we have, as it were, some companions watching along with us. I wish I could remember the way that the Valyard describes it, where he says he's going to adumbrate to episodic, a few episodic on this, something matrix spectrum. I don't know how he says it, but
the vocabulary techno battle in this one is off the charts, no question.
It's like, Valyard, just say you want to binge some Doctor Who. Just say it. It's okay. We've all been there.
So we made the call to split them off. I will say this will bite us in the can I say ass on our program?
Yes, you can. It's your own program. You can say it.
It'll bite us in our alien nether regions when and if we come to the Ultimate Foe before we have seen the other ones. We've already done Mysterious Planet, but we haven't done Mind Warp or Terror of the Vervoids, because the Ultimate Foe is really the culmination of the trial scenes. It's not and this is where, again, there's no wrong call here. It's also like the other evidence is that the episodes themselves are all called The Trial of a Time Lord, and they do count them out, and they go all the way up to episode 14. So in the show itself, like as it was shown to the audience, it's trying to make them all one story.
But they have different writers.
And different production.
Very different feel to each of them.
Yes.
I'm glad that we did the Mysterious Planet solo. I think that really worked because it was Bob Holmes' final story. Right. We got to talk about him and his style in this context. And we actually called out the Mysterious Planet when we were at Orphan 55 recently, because there was the connection of like finding the subway station, and it did really feel, in retrospect, Mysterious Planet, its own story, right? Totally. Very, very much so. The Ultimate Foe, even old story. That is the ultimate. Well, where does Mel come in? Is that the Ultimate Foe?
No, Terror of the Vervoids.
Terror of the Vervoids. Okay, so that definitely feels different. Like, you got different companions. It's the Doctor presenting his defense case. It just, And maybe the Ultimate Foe belongs with Terror of the Vervoids. That's the only potential change that I would make.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
maybe.
But
such a break in between. It's like the third act goes in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
I think this is the right call because, again, you kind of need to evaluate the Doctor Who story the trial people are watching separately. And I think Ultimate Foe, when we get there, it'll be like relatively easy to digest, but it will give us that opportunity to kind of step back and talk about the trial. When we do it, we'll have to decide whether or not we sort of pop back here and there to look at some of the scenes, assuming we haven't done Mind Warp and Terror of the Vervoids before then, to make sure we know what we're talking about. But we'll see.
By the way, if you are actually following along with us with the spreadsheet as you're listening to us, you will notice that there are links, and I'm just noticing this myself, that Peter's put into every story, so you can actually click on the mysterious planet and listen to us talking about it.
That's true.
Just another service provided to you by Pull To Open Enterprises.
And you can also see which ones have emoji titles.
Oh,
and
yes.
which ones do not. So feel
Very
free
excited.
to send those to us. If we can just cut to a little bit of housekeeping, drop them to us at Pull To Open 63 on Twitter, or just leave a review in your podcast app. Usually the iTunes podcasts app is the best place to do that. And of course, you can always participate in the conversation, either on TikTok at pulltoopen.com. No, wait. It's tiktok.com/ it's Pull To Open on TikTok.
Pull To Open on TikTok. And you will also see, if you're following along, the names of people who've dropped in those emoji titles, immortalized forever in this codex that will surely go to the stars with humanity. So yeah, your bid
credit
for immortality is right here. Bring it on.
If you can also drop us a line on YouTube at youtube.com/pull-to-open. And if you're watching us there, why not go ahead and click that bell for some notifications whenever we have new content. All right. The housekeeping's over.
Housekeeping over. Yes. Let's zoom forward to the new show.
Yes, exactly. So this one, the next difficult call on the Codex is probably our most difficult call. And this is, we decided to shave off Extremis from the Pyramid at the End of the World and of the Lie of the Land. So we treat Pyramid and Lie as a two-parter story, and Extremis as a different episode, which is, I guess, the prequel. Well, not really prequel, but the previous story.
It kind of is the prequel, though. No. And this is where we should definitely throw in a spoiler alert if you haven't watched Extremis. Please
stop your podcast.
Yeah, mute the next 5 minutes if you don't want to know the reveal at the end of Extremis. All right, you all gone? Okay. Okay, as you all know, folks who are remaining, or maybe you don't and you're happy with being spoiled, Extremis turns out to be that they're not actually the characters. They are simulations of the characters inside the monk's experiment, right? So the whole of Extremis, you're not actually seeing the Doctor. You're not actually seeing the real Bill. None of these characters are real. It is all just a simulation. And they realize that the simulated Doctor comes to realize this. So he himself does not feature in both stories, right? So it very much feels like its own thing. I also, this was perhaps the most difficult call, but I think that I very much argued for Extremis being its own thing because it's so good.
Right.
As a self-contained story. Now, we've been to the Pyramid at the End of the World, the Lie of the Land. Like, there's no way to retcon this. That we've made the decision; they are separate. One day we will go to Extremis separately, and I'm glad of that because Pyramid at the End of the World and Lie of the Land, not that good as a self-contained story, and not even that good. Like putting Extremis on wouldn't help. It would, in fact, just dilute and blur the lines, and we'd just be spending the whole podcast talking about how one story was great and the other was bad, right? So
we actually
totally makes sense.
In our rating system, we both gave that one Ogrons, which is everyone I think knows now. That's our kind of our lowest rating. Definitely didn't deliver on what it was trying to do, and the good scenes are few and far between. So
and I don't think it's a spoiler alert. I don't think it's a spoiler alert to say whenever we get to Extremis, it will be for me a Viscount banger.
Woo! Okay, I'm not sure about that. I might be. I'd have to. Well, I'll get there when I get there. So stay in suspense.
For me, that was Moffat on top form. But yeah, we'll get there.
But I think we're revealing a little bit of bias here on this one in that we want to ensure we're rating the things as they need to be and not as I don't know what I'm trying to say. This is we're basically kind of cheating this one a little bit, right? So it's fine to debate it.
I actually think from a story perspective, if you come at this from the perspective of story is all, story is everything, then it's actually quite an easy call because you're like, what am I going to sit down and watch as a complete story? And Pyramid/Lie really does feel like its own thing. Yes, there is mention of the the stuff that we learned the previous week. But it doesn't actually affect your enjoyment, as we proved by going to it. I think, now after having done it, totally the right call.
Yeah, and I'll say this in defense of it, like it's different writers, and this one is Stephen Moffat himself. Now he did co-write the next one with Peter Harness, who, funny enough, we're about to talk about an episode.
Kill the Moon
that he wrote. But it is it's again, like there's a lot of callbacks in Pyramid to Extremis, not a lot, but some, and that's a little bit of the setup. But as long as you are, we're okay with separating that out and sort of understanding those when we get to them. I think, you're right. Extremis really does work as a very good self-contained.
And it's not really a cliffhanger at the end of Extremis. Like you might say that Utopia and Last Time on Sound of Drums, like Utopia could be carved off, right, as its own thing.
Yes.
But except for that cliffhanger. And it's the fact that you are so on tenterhooks waiting to see, like, how do they get out of that? Where did the master go? All of that. It really does feel like a trilogy, whereas Extremis feels like, one and two.
In particular, that
the same writer. And
it's funny. We even skipped over that one. Come to think of it, because it just seems so obvious. And I think one of them also is like Jack Harkness begins that 3-parter, and it just feels like that is all one story. Even though, as we noted at the time, the resolution of the cliffhanger is really, really rushed and becomes kind of a non-event.
Yeah.
Which
it's
is
still
great,
the same characters, which Extremis, technically speaking, is not the same characters, right?
It's true.
So that's why you can definitely make that the rule, right? Is it the same characters from one story to the next?
So I think it's totally valid. It's totally defensible. We're keeping them separate.
Yep.
Okay, now we are jumping ahead to the call we had to make on the fly.
Yes.
As it was happening, because we were doing the podcast when Doctor Who Flux Series 13 was being broadcast, and Flux famously is sort of the subtitle for the entire season.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just going to correct your pronunciation there, Pete. It is actually called Flux.
My mistake. Oh, yes.
Flux. You got to pronounce it in a Sheffield accent. It's Flux.
Isn't it Liverpudlian, though? I could be wrong.
Well, that'll be Flux. It's Flux.
Oh.
It's Doctor Who Flux.
Nice. Let's get them all. Now to Geordie. Okay.
No, thanks.
So Flux was a whole season. It was 6 episodes, and they're unquestionably linked. I mean, it is all one story in a way. I mean, not in a way, in a clear way, but it is also 6 separate stories in a way as well, with different casts, different things happening. I think the most distinct ones are War of the Sontarans, Village of the Angels. And I'm going to fully disclose, I was probably pretty drunk watching half of these episodes. So
you yourself were in Flux, yes.
I feel okay uniting them all because they all kind of merge together for me, and I have trouble remembering which events happened in which episode.
There is so much overlap of characters between episodes here. And yes, the list does slightly change, but it's all like I'm pretty sure Vinder is in all of them, for example, and Carvanista. They are throughout, and there's no linking device like the Trial of the Time Lord to say you can easily make this separate because they're treating it as separate. It's not really the case.
Well, here's my problem. Okay, so the stories have different titles, and very similar to what we just sort of outlined for Extremis. I walked away liking and having different emotional connection with some episodes much more than others. And I'll just, full disclosure, and I think this is not uncommon among Doctor Who fans, but Village of the Angels is by far my favorite.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, the fact that I think about it that way, that, oh, this one was good, this one wasn't, I gotta say I'm torn on this. I mean, we could, separate them out and evaluate them one at a time and try to sort of unite them in our heads, and maybe evaluate the Flux storyline on when we do the final one, which the title escapes me right now. But I don't know. And again, part of this might be me trying to be pragmatic, because that's a lot of television we're going to have to watch for Flux if we do that all at once.
Yes, the final one is called the Vanquishers, by the way.
Okay, so I actually did a little bit of math, and so the total number of minutes of Doctor Who, if you look at the Daleks Masterplan with Mission to the Unknown, is about 316 minutes total.
Yeah.
All of Flux is 323. So we're actually going to be, it's a big, I'm not like we used to, it's a running joke on the podcast. We're scared of the Daleks Masterplan. We should really be terrified of Flux because it's even longer.
So, and the randomizer is going to throw that in as a nasty surprise. But here's the thing:
Chris, I'm relying on you to convince me that this was the right call, because a big part of me really wants to smash this into 6 and turn it into more digestible bits that I can evaluate as standalone episodes, and then give perhaps a Bicon banger, but probably a Dalek at the very least for Village of the Angels, which I really want to do. But now I can't do it because we have it all as one. Tell me this is the right call.
Okay, first of all, the link is that Chris Chibnall wrote them all.
Okay.
Except he co-wrote Village of the Angels with Maxine Alderton.
Giveaway.
The second link is that there's a cliffhanger at the end of most of them. Third link, largely the same cast of characters. Most of them, Yaz, Dan, Jericho.
Right.
Don't forget Jericho is in a lot of them. It's a developing story. And here for me is the clincher. We have not seen them together. We watched them while they were coming out week by week, and, got the, well, I don't know if you watched them all at once, Pete, but certainly I watched them individually. And,
I spread it out.
Yeah,
I didn't
which
have to,
I think is the natural thing to do.
Yeah.
I think we do. It does sort of beg to be seen all together and to be rated as an overall story, which is something that I think not a lot of Doctor Who fans will have done that yet. It's still too fresh. So I'm sort of interested. Yes, I'm a little bit scared of watching it all at once, of binging it, but it's probably pretty bingeable if, knowing what the story is now.
I think you've convinced me on that last point. The Chibnall stuff a little bit, but the fact that, yes, I did spread it out. Actually, it was actually a bit of a running joke on when I, if you recall way back when on the podcast, that I hadn't caught up for the longest time. And then I finally did, but I did it a little bit at a time. And again, probably under the influence each time. So
next time we'll watch. Yeah. I'll watch it drunk. You watch it sober next time, whenever it comes up.
But to your point, binging it all at once, not having to think back through a haze to what this story is and what the connections they're trying to make, I think will help immensely in what I really sort of take away from the season. So I think you're fair, and I think, to the point I was making about Village of the Angels in particular, I don't think that's necessarily bringing anything new to the table anyway, right? Because everyone kind of knows that's the good one. And let's see if we can get not necessarily revisionist, but like a review after the fact of Flux without not necessarily sky high expectations, but whatever state we were in when it was coming out. So yeah, okay. I'm cool with
and the Flux, and this is the other linking thing, is that the villain, as it were, the threat of the Flux, an unknown, all-consuming phenomenon that defies all laws of space and time, is present in every story. It is the ultimate villain as it were. So, if you're thinking about what if the evil plot had succeeded, which is something that we ask after every story, kind of, it's going to be an incomplete answer if we split them up. Just the fact that they tried, the TARDIS is overtaken by the Flux, and at the end of episode 1, definite cliffhanger. You're not going to want to stop it there. The TARDIS is hijacked at the end of episode 2. Again, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Flux. But you see where I'm going here.
Sure. They're connected. They're connected more than your usual Doctor Who episode breaks, for sure. Even maybe more so than the Extremis one. All right, we're doing it. My opinion of Flux was briefly in flux, but it is now stabilized, and we're going with it. It's all, oh my God, 323 minutes though.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think what, after having done Kill the Moon, in which I was only able to really watch it 5 minutes at a time, before my fury would boil over. We'll get to that. But
save it for the pod.
I'm just saying that it doesn't. The impression I was left with is it doesn't matter the length of time of Doctor Who that you're watching. It's like, how much is it irking you? Like, how much is it boring you? Like, then it feels much longer, right?
Well, that's our cue to be conscious of the length of time of our listeners as they're hearing us talk about our own codex. I think that's it. I think we've all learned something here. I'm certainly more confident in how we've decided to partition out the TV series. And you too can share that confidence by just checking the show notes. Guys, feel free to subscribe to us. We're a podcast. Follow us on the socials. I mentioned them earlier. I won't do it again. But you know where to find us. Search for Pull to Open on all your apps, on all your socials. And please join in the conversation. Let us know what you think about our calls about the Codex, what you think constitutes a good or a complete episode or not. And tell us if we missed any, because I'm pretty sure we got them all, but there might be another scandal brewing there.
Well, I will also tell you that we are going to have to make another difficult call with the next episodes of Doctor Who to hit the airwaves.
That's true.
The 60th anniversary special, so I'm sure we will be revisiting this question, since that is 3 specials, and we've no idea how or if they're linked in any way yet. They probably are, so it's going to be another tough call, and we'll refer back to this episode. You may be listening to it in the future, in which case, hope you enjoyed the 60th anniversary specials. We can't wait to see them, and we'll join you there in the future soon.
The Codex continues to evolve. Hey guys, come on back next week for when we talk about Kill the Moon. Peace.